Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Welcome back in person. This is great. Actually, I guess for the this class's parents, this really is kind of our first in-person uh, networking meeting. So it's great to see everybody. I'm Larry Sullivan. I am the assistant principal who works with your students' class, and I'm excited to be here today because I'm also the parent of a junior at another school. So I am not going to sit up here and present because this is not my strength and my skill. I'm here to take notes myself. So I have the benefit of having these wonderful resources available to me every day to walk down the hall and ask questions. My family with our son just did our first college tour on Monday, in fact. So it's gotten us thinking about things in a different way, and you are in great hands today in terms of having Sue Carroll, who runs our College and Career Center and helps coordinate so much of the pre-college testing as well as the college visits. In fact, she's just coming from one, and that's why she just made it here. So she will be able to fill you in on that process. And Dan Farina is one of our school counselors and brings a wealth of knowledge from working with all types of kids interested in all different types of schools and programs. So you're going to learn a lot today. I think even those of you who perhaps have been through the process before, how has the landscape changed in the last few years post-COVID? And as I said, I'm looking forward to learning as much as I can today. So without further ado, Sue and Dan, thank you.
Good morning. Oh, come on. Good morning. I just came from 34 kids at Boston College. Good morning. All right, good. Dan and I are psyched to be here to chat with you. You'll see there's nothing on the screen. This is the information portal right here. I think after spending so much time on Zoom with slideshows and virtual meetings, we're just going to talk about the year ahead. And there will be a bookend meeting to this that we've been invited to present at the end of the year. Today we're going to talk about what you should be doing or what you could be doing now. And come springtime, we'll talk about what you can and should be doing during the summer to make the application process and the halfway across the bridge to adulthood a lot easier for you and your students in the same vein. I will invite you all to follow the College and Career Center on Facebook. I know many of you get your information from New Canaan Moms. That's fine, but this is a good place for all things college related. Less venting, but more information related to where your children are right now. So that would be New Canaan High School College and Career Center, and we're also on Twitter at NCHSCOLCAR. There's a lot of information out there. I'll be your reader and post things that I think are true, that we've actually seen and are germane to the process ahead of you all, as well as just information about raising teens in general, which is no joke, I know. Having done it, it's no joke. Dan's gonna kick it off to talk about one of the very first things that's gonna happen in the very near future.
Yeah. All right, so the PSAT. So what is the PSAT? The PSAT is the National Merit Qualifier and a slightly shorter version of the SAT, which students take, in their junior and then, some in their senior year. Students typically take the PSAT with little to no test prep. It's kind of a baseline to see where your student is, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. And it's also a good opportunity to get familiar with the testing process, right? I mean, some kids have nerves and anxiety into it, right? But it's a good practice run for it. So the PSAT is on October 15th for students that registered. The check-in's at 7:30, and so students will come into the school. They'll go to our school counseling suite. They'll see their name and a room number. They'll go find their room number. They'll go to their room. What do they need? Okay, they need a picture ID, so it could be a student ID, learner permit, driver's license if they happen to have one then, pencils, and a calculator. Their phone should be turned off, and they're zoned in on the test. During the PSAT, your students, there's going to be a section where you're going to bubble in an email address. So tell them to bubble in the email address they check the most, probably their school email.
That's worth a conversation. That email address is going to be, and it's going to set the tone for college stuff in the future.
Because with that email, when the results come in, you're going to get it, sometime in December, an email to set up a College Board account. Okay, so when you set up the College Board account, that's where you're going to view your results. But it's going to go to that email. Okay, so like I said, have it be one that they check, and preferably their school email. So what does my student do with these results? Right, they get them. What do they do with them? The reports will be individualized, so they won't just be a number of a score. Right, they'll show weaknesses, they'll show strengths, and you'll have the ability to link your report with Khan Academy. Okay, Khan Academy is a good free test prep resource. You'll be able to link with Khan Academy, and Khan will tailor all your practice questions to your specific students, so where their weaknesses are.
You mentioned that was free.
And that is free.
Free.
Yes, we love that word. So, again, working their strengths and weaknesses. And there's also, other free resources in town. Summit is a good one. And so, most students will take that school-wide SAT in March. So we suggest once they get their results back that they start doing like an hour a week, of the test prep. So now that I've mentioned SAT, you might be thinking, well, SAT, ACT, which one does my student take? Well, there's some differences in the format and the content. The ACT has science on it. But we did a PFA presentation on the differences, and that video is on our school counseling website. So if you didn't get a chance to come to that last year, I suggest you check that out this year. And it really comes down to preference of the student. What do they like more? What are they stronger at? So that's kind of the PSAT in a nutshell there.
It's great, and that kind of kicks off the whole college thought process in a lot of kids. It's jarring for them that they have to think about this. You have had children who have come out of the womb ready to go to college, and then some of you have some that just don't even want to talk about it. And we're here for all the kids. We have seen kids from every kind of outlook as far as college is concerned. So we are less concerned with where they are because we'll get them to the finish line. So don't worry so much about that. How many of you have started looking at colleges? Okay, good. And how many of you, is this your first child going through this process? Okay, terrific. So you look relatively sane, so that's a good thing. Remember this. Take a selfie right now. See how we do next year. So really what you're looking for at this point, or what your student is looking for, is taxi cabs versus cows. It doesn't, at this point, you shouldn't be honing in on the actual college. Because if you do that, you will lose a whole lot of other great institutions out there. So you don't have to fly across the country. Fairfield U, Sacred Heart, Yale, Columbia, Fordham, Manhattan, and UConn. Go look at UConn. See what your tax dollars are bringing to the educational fortress that Connecticut is. So right now, you just want to sort of look for, is your student happy in a suburb similar to New Canaan? Many kids are. Do your kids really want cows and want to go to a place like Bucknell where there's cows? Or are they ready for a gritty college experience in the heart of a city where they're going to Uber everywhere and they have the city at their fingertips as well as the resources of the college? You're looking for size. You're looking for majors, and you're looking for how clean is the campus, how many blue danger, emergency lights there are on campus. You want to swing by whatever the local coffee shop is on campus, pick up a school paper. The school paper will tell you a lot of things that your walking backwards tour guide will not. And so you want to get a feel for the college. And, as you plug along on this, have fun, this doesn't have to be 100% just an arduous experience. Although when you go to a campus with significant hills like Lehigh or Holy Cross, you'll say, this is an arduous experience. They don't need a workout center here. They have the campus. But you're really trying to get a feel for it. And before you start making those reservations for tours, you should have a discussion with your child about where are you going to, are you fine with them going to California and paying airfare to come back and forth? Are you fine with them going to a private institution that costs $82,000 a year? So in your head and at the dining room table, that's where the Carrolls always had their serious discussions, probably because I don't cook. So the serious discussions happen at the dining room table. It's the dining room table conversation about setting parameters now, if you have parameters, because you don't want them falling in love with University of California at Santa Barbara, and who would not fall in love with that if, in fact, that's not going to be in your financial wheelhouse, okay? So those are discussions before you set up all of those college tours. We always talk about what parents can do for their kids in this process, and making those reservations is something that you can do. You'll go on their websites. Please, going forward, use your child's proper legal given name for all things that touch college, so that college applications don't get mixed up, and sign up for them. Your child will sign in there, usually with a QR code or some kind of thing that will designate that they have visited the college. For colleges that track demonstrated interest or use engagement as a parameter to accept a student, I would say also that the email address that Dan mentioned gets tracked every time they enter a college website. If the colleges are sending your students emails and they're not opening them, the college knows that. So regardless of what you feel about tracking people under the age of 18, it's happening. And if it's a school like Lafayette that tracks demonstrated interest, for example, these become important things. So that email address becomes important. And once you're on the tour, enjoy it, because there are colleges that you probably would have never gone to back in the day that you're going to visit now, and you're going to go, unbelievable. This place I want to go to college. So if it's a place that you're driving to, it's great to have a notebook in the car for your student to get back to the car and, put on some music, drive away, keep your mouth closed, and let your student write down their first impressions of the school. There's plenty of time to discuss it later. Even if you have 5,000 opinions, as Elsa and Anna would say, let it go. And really, again, try to figure out when you will talk about this stuff. But your child, a 17-year-old, 16-year-old brain processes stuff, as you well know, way differently than you do. And they need time to let it wash over them. So give them that opportunity without forcing your opinion down their throats. Oftentimes, the way they were raised, your opinion and their opinion might be very similar at the end of the day, but let them form their opinion, okay? You will start getting stuff in the mail as well as email stuff. Make sure you have a place in the house that your child can, as the school year ends, go back through all the stuff, the view books and everything else that the college is sending. And it's a great process for a child in June to go, these are the ones I liked, they're going to stay, and these are the ones I'm chucking. That's a great process, part of discernment that your kids will be going through. There's great search engines. Naviance has a great college search engine. Granted, the only way you can get on is through your child's password, but it's got a great search engine where you can put in size and location. College Board has a great search engine.
Yeah. Sorry, I was clearing my throat.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what else? There's a lot of colleges use something called Slate for their internal grading system. They have now developed a college search engine for high school students too, SLATE, that you might want to use. And then also, your school counselors are tremendous resources. So if you say, I'm going to go to Pennsylvania and I'm going to look at Franklin and Marshall, what else, should I look at? Your counselors will tell you, well, Lehigh, Lafayette, Bucknell, there's Gettysburg, there's lots of schools that are crossover schools, perhaps, for that school. So make good use of your college counselor. Your students hopefully know by now that there's no limit on how many times you can visit your school counselor. So make good use of that, of those resources. And then, of course, you just have to figure out how to pay for it all. So I will probably tear up at this, because I always do, but because to me it's sort of a adulthood thing. But I think if you're not going to talk to your kids about the cost of college and how you are going to pay for it, you're missing a key opportunity, again, on that bridge to adulthood. Oftentimes, parents do not discuss finances with their students, and they end up being college seniors ready to graduate with really not a clue as to how the next step is going to actually happen. If you've been saving, if the grandparents have been kicking in money since the moment you found out you were pregnant with this lovely child, and you have no problem writing out a check for $82,000 a year, good for you. Your child should know that. The word savings would be key in that, because you're making an investment in your child. They should know that. So when they have a chance to play their 8th game of beer pong or actually go to class, they will choose properly. If you are going to take out significant loans, your kids should know that. What's a loan? How do I pay it back? Is the loan in my name? Is it in your name? If you don't do this, you're missing an opportunity. It's unfair to your child. So that's my lecture on financial aid. But Dan will give you practical information.
Yeah, so we have a financial aid night October 19th. It's a great opportunity, just like Sue said, to have those conversations with your child and start, kind of that planning process. You'll get a link, or we'll send an email through Zoom, or send an email that will have the Zoom link on it. And we also, there's 2 other things. We have, Fast Web and Merit Aid, 2 different things, and so we'll have those handouts on the website for you guys as well. I'm going to head into the application part, of college. And Sue just kind of gave you the rundown of college visits and, what to look for and where students at. So part of the Common App includes, there's a whole different bunch of parts of it. Personal information, educational history, activities. Some schools will have supplementals. We have the college essay, and then there are teacher recs and scores. The scores, if you are applying to a test optional school, are you going to send them or are you not going to send them? And then if your institution requires scores, then you have to send them. When you get your scores back and when you start taking tests, it's a good time to have a conversation with your school counselor, and your school counselor can kind of advise, where do I send, where don't I send. In terms of the college essay, we partnered, the PFA is going to bring the college essay guy in again, and that's going to be sometime in the spring for our juniors. Not sure on the date yet, but we'll get that out to you, when we have that. At the end of January, through February, school counselors, we hold our junior appointments, which are, really big, really important meetings. you, your student, your school counselor, you sit down and you kind of discuss, where do you see themselves? I love Sue's taxis and cows. I think it's hysterical. So, we talk a little bit about that, right? Climate, you want to be in a warm weather. Do you want to be, cold? Do you want to go up to Syracuse, where it's freezing, Wisconsin, where it's freezing? All different schools. You want to be in Florida. So the proximity of a city to your school, can you be at a UConn, or Penn State, right? School spirit, right? Do you want the big time sports? Are you an athlete yourself and you want to play at the next level? Division III, Division II, Division I. Where do you see yourself? Do you want to be near and far? And that's always a fun conversation to have with the parents and students. Or I want to go to California for school, and their parents are like, whoa, okay. So that's a good conversation, and it's a good time to start those building blocks. We go over the transcript and we explain it to you guys. It's often the first time that you see a transcript or your student sees their transcript. The different GPAs, we talk about Naviance. Hopefully the student, we ask them all to add schools into their Naviance before we have that junior meeting so we can look at the schools. And then you kind of find schools that are similar, in whether it be geographic, academic, that type of thing. And, we talk about, what are your plans? Do you know what you want to major in? It's okay if you don't, right? But just kind of laying those, important pieces out as we go. And then when the weather's, really nice outside and all the kids want to do is get to summer, we as school counselors go into their health classes and do a Common App startup. So we get each kid on the Common App. They start it. We also chat with them. We have a whole presentation for them about the Common App, and then we talk about teacher recs. So we ask them to ask 2 teachers, by the time they leave for summer, whether, area of interest, possibly maybe something they want to major in. But, it doesn't have to be a course that you got an A in. It could be a good story. Maybe your student struggled a little bit in a certain class and then ended up, coming out on top of it. So it's a good way to, kind of like, show your student more than just, application. So, what can I do as a parent? Sue alluded to it a little bit earlier. Help them be organized. Your student may have been born, ready to tackle this process. Your student may be shying away from the process. So, everybody's ready at different times. Sue's idea of a notebook is awesome. A place to keep their things, right? College, this is my college stuff. This is the college I like. This is the college that I don't. And just kind of keeping them generally, organized is something that you guys can do that's super important. And then, like I said, the process is different for every single kid. And our school counselors do an awesome job of meeting each kid where they're at and kind of, helping them. It's individual, right? So helping them along the way and taking them through, as the kids feel and as we see fit.
And in April, we'll have a college interviewing workshop for juniors during the lunch block to get them familiar with college interviews. We always do it before the April break. April break seems to be the time to go look at colleges, especially south of us, hankering for the warm weather. So if you're walking around Wake Forest and the admission rep says, "Oh, would you like to interview?" Wake Forest is a big interview college. Your child will be ready to interview during those trips during the springtime. Once college applications are sent off in earnest senior year, we do one-on-one interviews, mock interviews with your students to prepare them they're terrific. It's one of the most fun parts of my job is doing mock interviews with your kids. They're hysterically funny and kinder than you would know. So, and that's it for the overview. That's a lot of information, and I know that there's probably questions surrounding a lot, especially with what Dan said. I've been doing this. This is my 20th networking meeting for junior parents. And a lot of it has changed, but actually the process has not. The only difference is that it's online and the Common App has made it a lot easier. Angst is still the same on both parents' part and students' parts. And I think also this whole thing about score choice has thrown a monkey wrench into a lot of people's what they were thinking about as far as colleges are concerned. I think I probably have seen maybe 12 colleges so far this year that we've had visits so far, and the visits are just for seniors because at this point, you should be kicking the tires of the college and asking specific questions. I was asked this morning why a junior couldn't go to one of the visits, and they're really not for juniors. And the reps don't want to speak to juniors now. The reps that come and visit us are usually the first readers of the application. So they want to meet the kids that they're going to be reading their apps very soon. So this is a time for seniors to be very, very specific in what they're looking for. This is a time for juniors to be very general in what they're looking for. So we're happy to answer any questions that we have provoked, if you have any. Yeah.
Is it a good idea to maybe start with college fairs now, or there are ones that are coming up? And then just a small admin question, you were talking about the email. I assume that anything that goes to the colleges will come through from the school through their school email. So would you just recommend they stick with their school email for everything, College Board, all the colleges?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll answer that one first. Yeah, I would use your school email. We typically tell our kids to use their school email for the Common App as well. So it's just something that we know they have access to, and they're going to check it. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's some people who say, oh, you should open up your Susan Carroll College at gmail.com. But the problem with email, and you know this, Dan, they don't read it. You know what the most important email address is? The one that they'll read, the one that they actually open. I can't tell you this enough. We sat through University of Rochester talking, and she gave a very open description of how your kids are tracked. And that's even for schools that don't track demonstrated interest. So, open the emails, read the emails would be my message. So. And as far as college fairs, there's a bunch coming up. There's college fairs in Greenwich and in Wilton the week of October 10th. I believe one is on the 13th. You would go onto their website. You can go to them. They don't publish it out for the outside world, but you're more than welcome to go to their gyms and pick up information. It could be very, very helpful, especially if the school is geographically a distance. But also, I want to say that schools really now, especially for juniors and sophomores, are really keeping with this virtual experience. They like it. It doesn't cost them a lot at all. And so they like these things. So I invite you, if the school is one that you physically can't visit, go on their websites and go to the things that they are putting on. I don't mean just a virtual tour of the campus, but they're actual where they'll have meet the professors in the engineering school or whatever. Again, you're probably going to be tracked for it, but they are very, very useful bits of information, and they're not going away. They're a result of COVID that's going to stick with us, those virtual experiences. Yeah.
I have a question. So I have a son that graduated last year. So when we went in spring of 21 to see schools, there were no tour guides, and you kind of did self-guided tours, which we loved because people all over campus would come up to us, standing there with your map, and they're like, oh, can we help you, this, that, and you end up talking to people, either kids on the campus or people that work there. I found it really interesting. Are schools still doing that, or are they back to the
They're pretty much back. In fact, for us, only 3 visits so far out of 125 are virtual, are on Zoom this year. Yeah, you can go. Yep, they've got their kids are back on campus. Yep, but you hit on a really.
Kids were on campus, which was great, but we didn't have to get a tour guide. We could do it.
Yeah, well, they still have that. That's always going to be an option, especially on Sundays when a lot of schools don't give tours. But you brought up a really important point. You're talking about college culture. You can tell happy students if they see a stranger on their campus at a map and they go up and engage with them. That's something at a store in the back of that's a good thing. That says a good thing about that school. Yeah.
I mean, a tour guide can make or break a school.
Yeah, but some tour guides are paid. So, and some are volunteers. Holy Cross's tour guides are all volunteers, but some are paid. It's a job. So, so I always take what a tour guide says with a big grain of salt.
Well, that's why I kind of thought it was interesting, doing the really got a sense of a culture versus when you get a tour guide.
Yeah, you just can't get into a dorm then, though. It's good to see the dorms. What other questions might you have?
Just going to ask about the email question before.
Yeah.
Can the kids can't, am I correct in that their school email, they can't forward anything to us from their school email? Is that correct, or is that just certain things?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest. They can't forward things. I mean, I know I can forward things from my school email, so.
Because I was going to say that might be an argument for using a personal email versus the school one if we can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
So then, do you recommend for them to take a practice ACT to see if they like it and when?
Yeah, I mean, I would talk to their school counselor about that. It depends, what's your student, strong at, and like I said, it's all about preference when it comes down to it. Some students do really well on the ACT and don't do as well as on the SAT.
No.
Don't offer a practice one here.
No, we don't. We traditionally have not been a huge ACT school. So it's become more popular in the 20 years I've worked here, but we just don't have as many kids. But you can take an ACT practice test at Summit or Appleroth or Revolution Prep and figure out if that's, some kids find it's a faster test. It's a faster paced test than the SAT, but that suits some kids, and the science kind of suits some kids also, which the College Board test does not have. I will tell you that I'm starting to hear different percents of kids that have sense scores, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting for the colleges also. For your students, I'm hearing that this year is the third year that schools that have been test optional, newly test optional, I don't mean like Wake Forest or Providence or Holy Cross or Bates that have been test optional for years. I'm talking about the new to test optional. In the last 3 years, this is going to be their year that they're going to make a decision. They're going to have college students on their campuses that, bless you, that have many of them went to that school without ever submitting test scores, and the colleges are going to take a look at them and see how they are doing. Are they doing as well as their peers that submitted test scores? And then that's going to decide where they are going forward. So some state universities that are governed by a state body, such as University of Georgia, University of Florida, those are not test optional. Those schools are still are submitting test scores. Georgetown, God bless them, still, every single test score. Every time you walked by a test, you have to tell them. So stay tuned for what your kids will do. But I think that you go all in on this. I think you always try your best. I think if you're gonna sit for that March test, which is a graduation. No, I should just keep my mouth closed on this, because what is it, Dan?
So we take the graduation standards from that. So a certain reading score, and then there's a reading standard, math score, there's a math standard. And if you don't reach it through the SAT, there's different ways you can reach graduation standards.
Right, so your kids should be taking these things seriously and see how they do. And then you apply it, you look at what the college has said about their test scores, and then you talk to your school counselor. But I think you go in with the mind, if you choose to, if you already know that you have an awful test taker in your household, that might be a different discussion to have with the school counselor. But, go all in. Try hard on the PSAT, try harder on the SAT. If there's an ACT in your future, try hard on that. That's what we should do. Yeah.
Could you talk more about the tracking? You're saying if they don't open an email, or if they do, how do they use that? Like, they open it more often? Ooh, I'm going to select the student. I mean, how is that used?
We got that impression from...
Yeah, I think, each school does it differently. Some schools are just tracking like where you're going on their website, what you're opening emails, how much time you're spending on, the website, what you're clicking on. Are you like you're going to athletics? Are you going to majors? That sort of thing. And then I think some schools really take that into account, and then others don't, but they're still tracking. So it's kind of both.
Yeah, I don't think it's any different than going on the Target website
Right.
and buying detergent, frankly.
Right.
I mean, I hate to, I mean, I know it might be Harvard, but I don't think it's any different.
How do they know it's your phone or your computer that's doing that?
That's
Because
a
it-
good question for me. I don't know.
Because it leaves cookies. In other words, your whatever your particular thing is, and so they can figure it out. A couple of years ago, I wrote a letter, an email to the director of admissions for Notre Dame, because I was really annoyed that these sophomores were coming in saying that they had been invited by the director of admissions to come to a college visit. I mean, I could barely see them above my desk. They were so tiny, these sophomores. And I said, well, you're not invited. The school has its own rules, and, you go back to class and work hard. And then I wrote the director of admissions a very polite, in a Sue Carroll way, email, and said, our school rules are different than your invitation. And he said, oh, we didn't probably even know they were sophomores. We tracked them and sent them an email because they had spent such and such time on our website. And so that's how those invitations got sent. And I was like, wow. So, a word to the wise. Yeah.
I know that also people get tracked through your phone, so when you're walking somewhere, you send signal and they collect your data, so you know. So when you go to the supermarket, you pass in a cookie and you stop in front of the cookie that you like, you'll get the ad. So the same so the same thing happens.
So if you walk around Yale's campus and you say, I'd like to go to Yale, you're all of a sudden going to, yeah. Well, I didn't mean to make this meeting about Big Brother, but I'm just saying that if it's a small liberal arts college especially, small liberal arts colleges track demonstrated interest. They always have. So I'm just saying, if you could use it to your advantage, why wouldn't you? Darcy.
So this is more just two quick notes about the college essay, especially for people who haven't been through the process. Most, if not all, of the junior year English teachers assign a college essay at the end of junior year, so at least that takes some of the heat off of parents to get that initial draft going. And then also the Writing Center is prepped and staffed, open every period, every day, and welcome students of all grades and levels, and they're ready to help with college essays. And that's free. I mean, that's just part of school, so I just wanted people to know that.
Yeah, in New Canaan, I can say this because I live in New Canaan. If we were to bottle air and say this air is better than, and we're going to charge $25 a canister for the air, we would buy the air because we intrinsically think that something you pay for is better than what your tax dollars have bought you. We have the most awesome English department. The Writing Center is amazing. It's amazing. If your kids have not found it yet, it's amazing. And if you were prone to want to go and write a big check to someone who will help you through this process, and there are lots of people out there who are happy to take your money to help you through this process. One of the things that they shouldn't be helping with at all is that essay. It is one of the few times your students gets to actually represent themselves in 500 words. And they can do it. They've been writing 5-paragraph essays since 3rd grade. So this is not bigger than it needs to be. So between the amazing English teachers that we have, the writing workshop, the Writing Center, and then the PFA funding the essay guy, his employees are great at helping kids with essays. And then senior year, take it back to your favorite English teacher and have them check for grammar. And then take it to your school counselor who will check for tone and make sure it sounds like you. That essay is not a big deal. And also remember that college representatives spend under 15 minutes per application for the entire package. So it's much more important to be worried about how you're doing in calculus and English and history than it is some of this other stuff. It's important, but your transcript is still the most important thing. But again, use the resources that you have. Use Khan Academy on the college. It's, again, free. And your kids are all well-versed with Khan Academy. You might not know what it is, but your kids are very well-versed with it. Yes, ma'am?
You mentioned the January, February visits with the 2-hour transcripts and everything. Is that with parents? It sounded like it was.
Yes, that's called the junior appointment. So it's, parents, and then the student and the school counselor. Yeah. When you get that email, it gets scheduled and you get the email for it.
I don't know if you're willing to open this can of worms or not, but could you, at a very high level, could you walk us through ED, ED1, ED2, early action, that whole maze?
Yeah, I'll explain it. So ED is early decision. That's one school. And if you apply to that school and you get in, you are going to that school. You are legally binded to go to that school. So you sign something, the school counselor signs something, your kids sign something. You're saying that you're going to go when you get in. So that means if you apply to University of Alaska and you get in ED, you are going to University of Alaska ED. Then
That'd help you.
Yeah. So then there's EA, which is early action, which is just you hear back sooner. You get your application in sooner. Typically the deadlines, for early action, Clemson, Georgia, they're 10-15. And then, early action is and then early action also is like 11-1, typically like Wisconsin is 11-1. And then there's ED dates, which is, usually 11-1, 11-15, but early action is you're just hearing back earlier, you're getting your application in earlier, and you're hearing, most of our kids like to submit EA because they have everything done, so, why not? Why not hear back earlier? And then when you do hear back, you can kind of say, all right, I got into these schools, I didn't get into these schools, I'm deciding between these three, let me go visit them again and get a clearer picture of where I'm going to be for the next 4 years.
Where you applied for EA, do they see each other?
I don't.
No.
No.
Well, I say no, but of course, you're at a college fair and, you've been standing next to your other college rep, Lafayette between Landmark and Lehigh, and you talk. But no, that there's no reason why one college should know. You can only apply to one early decision school. That's a really big deal. As Dan said, you are signing a document saying that you're going there. The problem with early decision is if you're looking for financial aid, the financial aid package is not usually presented to you until after the decision. And so once you've signed the thing saying you're going there and you realize that you've gotten no financial aid, you can, usually wiggle out of it. That probably is the only reason you can wiggle out of it.
Right. I'll quickly talk about ED2 as well, because I know that was part of the question.
Yeah.
So if you get deferred or denied from your ED school, there's an ED2. Some it's growing in popularity for schools. So they'll have an ED2. So if I ED to BC, right, and I don't get in, I can ED2 to Miami. So it's just kind of another way to get students in, and at the end of the day, right, they're a business. So if you're ED, they know if you get in, they have your money. So how does that timing work? Like, ED2 is later.
January.
ED2 is later in January.
Find out that ED1 that you don't get in, and then you apply.
You can. You don't have to. You can. Right.
And it sounds sort of like more daunting until you're through it. Anyone who's been through it already. So, amazing school counselors. I mean, the departments, they really are terrific. And so once you've applied ED, your stuff is all ready. You might have to do additional supplemental essays. Correct. But as far as the package is concerned, your recommendation's already been written because the stuff's already been submitted once. So it is not so arduous to do it again, and the timing is usually fine. There's also something called rolling admissions. A lot of state universities have rolling admissions, and they just read applications as they're coming in. And so there's not a set date for them to release decisions. It's a rolling, this kid got it on Tuesday, that kid got it a week and a half later. So it's rolling decisions and rolling answers.
Yeah, and as I said, like it's a process, right? And we meet your student where they're at. So if they're not ready to apply early action, it's completely fine, right? And then you apply regular decision. So just different ways, and then your school counselor, can talk more about, individually to your specific child and their needs, in that junior meeting as well.
Yeah, and it really is if you fell in love with someplace. I mean, there are some kids will say, well, I have an 89 average, and I just love Boston College more than anything. And an 89 average is not going to get you into Boston College. So, I'll apply ED, and that will show them how enthusiastic I am. Like, I am going to come there, hell or high water, if you take me. But the problem is you're fighting against kids who are much higher GPAs, test scores, everything. So that graph on Naviance is a helper. And I think pretty much every college in the country, you can correct me, Dan, if I'm wrong, is going to show inflated scores for the last 3 years. Boston College this morning, she said her scores are inflated by 60 points. 60 points. I couldn't get 60 more points on my SAT if I tried. So the whole thing about how to apply ED, why you would apply ED, that's going to be a conversation that you're going to have with your school counselor as you get further on in the process. There might actually be a school that you don't want to apply early to at all. That's possible.
Yeah.
So, pardon?
So with test optional, kids who are sending their scores are typically way over the average of that school. So now they're driving that average up. If I have a 1550 SAT, I'm going to send it. So and then another kid does the same thing, right? And so it just drives it up that average.
But the rep will be quick to tell you that if everything else is great and accept your test scores, then don't send them.
Right.
Go on the rigor of the fine education you got here at New Canaan High School.
And like Sue said, your transcript is
That's the
most
key.
important.
That's king. The transcript is king.
Touch on, I'm hearing about, you have to create the story for your student, and you have to, all your extracurricular activities that you do, and volunteering, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Do you want to?
Yeah. So the application is a holistic thing, right? I mean, college want to see well-rounded kids and things of that nature. So, but really, like, they're creating the story themselves, right? And so, colleges can read through if you're just doing something to do it, right? If you're just part of this club to just be a part of the club, then you're really not in it for the right reasons, right? But if you're in that club and you're invested, I have a student who's in the baking club here, and he absolutely loves it, and outside of it, he has nothing to do with baking, but he loves it. And it's like, so like that tells like a little bit more about him and who he is. And, so it's just kind of the whole application. Right. If you really enjoy, working with kids, then work with kids and highlight that. And, if you're going to go into the child development fields, then great, so it's a holistic process, and there's a lot to it. But yeah, I think, write down everything you do, so like talk about staying organized, what did that student participate in their freshman year? What did students participate in their sophomore year? Because it will all be put in that application.
So when you get to the Common App, there's 10 slots for activities. So does that mean that you should go out and find 7 more things to do? No. If your child comes home and takes care of their younger siblings because both parents are outside the house working, okay, that belongs as an activity. And from this zip code, I would say a job is a good thing, as opposed to going to Fiji to build houses for poor people. A job is a good thing. I think that the club fair is tomorrow. And if there are things that your kids are interested in, like the baking club, that they should go for it. But do they have to have 10 things? No. But they have to be able to talk about a few things. If it's on that application, be prepared to talk about it in an interview. I think what you're talking about is the marketing of your children. And I think that that's a real thing. I'm sorry that it is, but I think it is. But I think you should be really careful about it. Your kids are good enough. They're great as a matter. You know that. We know that. They're good enough. Don't make them something that then they have to go to a campus where maybe it's above their head. You know, you want them to find their place, and they will. Again, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen it not work out. And what's the worst that could happen? They end up someplace else and they have to transfer? Okay. You know, maybe they're transferring because they took a neuroscience class and now they want to be a neuroscientist, and Bates College only has one neuroscience class. You know, so there's a lot of things that you should worry about. And this process probably should be, you know, pretty low on the totem pole. Your kids are in really good hands. And again, you've raised lovely children. They're going to be interesting to somebody, you know? So again, I would worry less about marketing them, because that's a tricky thing, especially if they are not being represented as to who they really are. So, yeah.
The March SAT, is that for junior or senior year?
That's for juniors, and that is a state test. It's a thing here in Connecticut. It's free to your children, which means your tax dollars have paid for it, and juniors are advised to take it.
Yeah. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, in that junior appointment, you'll get a booklet where we'll have SAT dates, you know, for the summer and then for the senior year.
There's no sign up. Yay!
No sign up.
You just show up that day, you eat some protein for breakfast, and take the test. Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned that the schools are deciding, the test optional schools are deciding this year maybe about going forward. So does that mean our juniors who might take PSAT and decide, well, I'm not going to really work on this next year when they're actually applying?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying take it seriously.
Yeah.
But you still, at the end of the day, there's plenty of colleges that have been test optional for years. You know, that predate all of you. You know, Bates has been test optional probably for 35 years now. So, yes, sir.
Two questions. Can you spell out exactly what this Naviance or Naviant is?
Yeah, so Naviance, and we do, I think we do a PFA thing on that as well for the juniors, but Naviance is a platform where a lot of different things are going on, to be honest. There's colleges in there. You can look at their overviews. You can look at their admissions. You can look at their where your student ranks in the GPA. You can see the national average. There's a lot of stuff going on in Naviance, and the Naviance is the vehicle that we use to send teacher recommendations and all of our eDocs. So on the service level, it's really a college search tool, I would say, more so, and to match, you know, your student has an Naviance account. They already do, yeah. And you basically but you have to be with them. They click single sign on. And then you could sit there, and it's a good opportunity to sit with your kid and show them different schools, right? Or them show you different schools and what they're interested in.
Okay, and then the second question.
Yeah.
Do early action colleges then fill up early, or do they reserve spots for later applicants?
Yeah, no school will take 100% of their kids' early action. No school will take 100% of their kids' early decision. Usually a school will fill up a class maybe 30% early decision. So they always will wait to see who's in the regular round. That's that January round, because maybe, you know, student A did not get into Vanderbilt, but might be a great fit for Providence College. And so Providence would want that child. So yeah, nobody fills up 100% with any of these rounds. Yeah.
What's an average number of times that people take the SATs? Like, you know, like once, 3 times, you know?
Yeah. I think it all depends, right? Some kids are happy with their score when they get it back. Some other kids want to keep trying to improve. But typically, 2 to 3 times. I would say 3 to 4. Right around that range. 3 times would probably be the average.
and also, I don't know if you said it earlier, as senior year is a great time to take a test, too.
Yeah.
October of their senior year, they would still, especially, I don't want to say this, I'm sorry, I apologize in
Go for
advance.
it.
Boys, I'm sorry. But sometimes the light bulb goes off later. And so I've seen a lot of boys do very well in the October SAT. They still have plenty of time to go early decision if they choose to. So don't think that this is a marathon that stops in the end of junior year. This is ongoing. There's October and November. There's summer dates also. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I have plenty of students that took the one in October that are seniors.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to.
Quick question for you. I know there's a lot of Algebra 2 on the SAT.
Yes.
And if they're just taking Algebra 2 now, I'm concerned that they'd be taking the SAT in March when there's still several months of learning they've not yet had. So are they required to take it in March? Or would they be better served to take it in June?
I mean, we suggest they take it in March. I think you've gotten so much of the curriculum already, into March. So I think they should take it in March. But
And also remember, you're going to, based on the PSAT, sign up for Khan Academy. So if math, for example, was a weak part of your PSAT, Khan Academy knows that. And Khan Academy will be centering their help to you based on your math score. So there's help along the way. Yeah.
At what point should the kids start populating their school list on Mondays? Is that
So-
something they do now or later?
no, later. We'll communicate with them to hey, junior appointment. Put a couple schools in your Naviance list. So I would wait. Yeah.
You talked earlier about school visits. Do schools come here to visit? And is that what you're saying?
Yes. Each year, we have about 100, 125 colleges that come to visit. Your students will have this opportunity next year. The visits happen during the school day, usually at the half block, and they happen right in my office. They're wonderful. And kids can at that point ask very specific questions as opposed to listening to the rep. Now it's their opportunity to be the consumer and ask their questions. You're welcome. They are just in the fall. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes we have them in the spring too. But yeah, the ones that would happen in the spring would be open to underclassmen, but and usually they're state universities that travel in the spring. But the ones that happen in the fall run through November, and they are just for seniors.
Yeah, and I think you just said they should be done with their applications at that point. They don't have to be done with their application. That application doesn't have to be submitted. It's got to be submitted by the deadline. They don't have to have their application done before they go to that visit.
Well, yeah, one more, and then we'll say adieu.
Do colleges appreciate the rigor of New Canaan High School?
Oh my gosh, I wish you had, talk about a fly on the wall between Providence College yesterday and Boston College this morning. Our reps have been our reps for a long time at those two schools, 15 years and 16 years, to be exact. I watched these two reps grow up. And they said, so they've read our applications for that length of time, and they said to the kids, we know what it's like to go to school here. You have so many amazing opportunities. We know that there's not a lot of grade inflation here. We can trust your transcript. The kids were like nodding. It was so good for the kids, I think, to hear that. So yes, I think that that we're lucky enough. Again, I live here in New Canaan. We're lucky enough to have a stellar high school with an amazing staff. So
And if I
Thank
could
your
just-
teachers, yeah.
Yeah, and if I could
reputation
just
is
add
great.
one more thing to that. Schools, as a part of the application, get our school profile. So they see like our average test scores. They see how many APs we have. They see how many honors courses we have. It's basically if you open the pamphlet and like, who is New Canaan High School if you didn't live here, right? So they get that. They look at that. And like Sue said, with the reps that, have been around for a while, they know the reputation of this high school.
Yeah, you can look at the school profile too. It's on the New Canaan High School website. There's a couple of handouts. Dan mentioned FastWeb and Merit-Aid, which are clearinghouses, national clearinghouses for scholarships that your kids might want to spend 20 minutes signing up for, and they will get emails about scholarships that are national that pertain to them. It's hard to get a national scholarship. Local scholarships, which they'll know more about their senior year, are a little bit easier to get, but why not try for them? And also there's, including in the handouts, which are not physically being handed out, would be an article about college tours and parents, and here's the name of it, College Tours, what parents should do to be seen and not heard. So I'll end with that. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.